Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Flurza experience.
Exactly.
Oh, you know what? We totally forgot the standard intro, which is Dzień dobry, dzieci.
Dzień dobry, dzieci, indeed.
Yeah, that's my bad. Well, either way, we'll get it better for next episode. This is a show about Gwent and so much more. I'm joined by the incomparable communicator, Pavel Burza. How are you, friend?
Wow. I love your introductions. I like it. I don't know if I'm that good of a communicator, but I try. I think it is my job, so I need to be more or less fairly good at it. So at least I try to, get that right.
Don't use this platform as a way to lose your job. That's not how we want to do that. That's for me to do. that's my risk. You don't take that risk. But incomparable communicator I think is a decent one.
Beautiful. Beautiful. We made it. Episode 7, man. That's a lucky number. 7 is a lucky number, right?
It depends, because 7. I mean, 7 is lucky in certain cultures. 13 is actually unlucky in so many, but it's a very lucky number apparently in like Italian culture. So it depends. So I'll just say that it's a lucky number because A, we got here, and B, hey, it's you and me, buddy. You and me. So
can't be better.
So, but the thing about it, is when you say lucky numbers, you'd think that with the amount of lucky numbers that exist, that some of them would rub off on me. But in reality, flake luck is stronger than any other type of luck, and luck and I don't typically mix. We're like oil and water, so it's not a good mix.
But you've been lucky, I think, this weekend, right? This past weekend, I think you top 8'd a tournament, right? Is it true?
I did. Excuse me. So, there is what's called the Pro Quest, which is essentially these tournaments that are around the world, where if you win it, you're on the Pro Tour for Flesh and Blood. And I finished 2nd seed, moving into the top 8. And in the top 8, I'm trying to put a compare. Imagine you're going into round 3 up 3 cards in Gwent, and you have all of your golds. It should be easy peasy, right? Yeah. Well, I ended up losing to a very, very calm, collected player by the name of Raymond Chow, and I will always talk about this guy because he's one of the nicest dudes in my area, and he's an excellent player, and he beat me. But I had to afterwards. I had to be told, the place where I played this tournament was at a LGS called Hairy Tarantula, and I had to. And again, I've never played in many tournaments. In other games, really, Flesh and Blood is the first one where I've really dipped my toe in as a competitor, and I had to be told by all the pros, and I'm talking about like national champions and whatever. They had to sit me down and explain to me. They're like, dude, you finished 2nd seed in what is widely considered the hardest tournament in North America, which is the Hairy Tarantula Pro Quest, because the best players typically are at that tournament, and I finished 2nd seed. So that is my little feather in my cap.
You're selling yourself short. That's what you're trying to tell us right here, right?
Well, it's a little bit of imposter syndrome where I'm sure a lot of people can relate, maybe yourself as well, but sometimes you figure that things and your achievements that you've accomplished are not based on your own skill set, that they're undeserved, and that is something that I've really had to struggle with, whereas in reality, all I really lean on sometimes are the failures versus how far I got. And I mean, that's why I wrote that Channel Fireball article, because it really helped me. And it's funny because after I lost, they're like someone's like, dude, just go reread your article. I'm like, yeah, I guess, because I did lose off a misplay.
Article and learn from it, right?
Basically. Yeah. It's been a good weekend though.
Amazing. Good. I mean, that's awesome. Congrats, man.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Dziękuję.
Na zdrowie. Okay, on the show today, we'll be talking about our favorite card games. So that's always awesome. I think we always kind of, get derailed and talk about our favorite card games. So that's standard. Where does Gwent rank for us in this ranking? And brand new word of the week, as always. So Polish Babcia Marysia word of the week. That's going to happen today. And we have a special segment which we were talking about in the previous episode. But if you missed the previous episode, so we'll be joined by Celie, Thea, and Alias V to discuss last week's submitted fan question. So that will be a separate segment. We'll be just sticking around and listening in and kind of moderating the conversation. But I can't wait for that because it's going to be awesome. and these ladies are amazing. So super, super awesome to get them here. And it's our first, like, I remember we were saying, like, it's going to be cool to have a guest, but we don't have one guest. We have like 3 guests. So that's even better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is going to be a very broader scope conversation and getting in as many viewpoints as possible, obviously. But we brought in essentially 3 of the most significant women in card gaming, which is, there's Sealy, Tia, and Alias. I mean, Alias is not just one of my closest friends, but she's also somebody who has blazed her own trails in this industry, through Gwent, through Magic, etc. She's not only a wonderful broadcaster and human being, but she's also an A+ card player, like somebody who wins tournaments, gets to the top rankings, very frequently. The other outlier to that conversation was I tried high and wide to get in touch with Radu Andrada, who has been at an open. She has competed at an open. And I think I say this all the time. I've said it all the time. Anytime someone brings up Radu Andrada, I always tell people, I'm like, if ever I had a secret crush on anybody in the Gwent community, it's her. So when I got completely just dusted by her, just instant ninja dust, just not even just smoke and mirrors, just goodbye. It was like not even a response. I was like, yeah, that's about right. Like, I just totally felt it. But she's a busy woman. Amazing. She's busy as hell. So I would imagine that. She's super busy. But that was part of it. It was that I wanted to get her on, but she was busy, and it was Flake in high school, which was ask a woman to help you out or to do something, and to just get completely ninja dusted. Ooh. Yeah, but first we got to get back to normalcy here, which is the Dagon rumor report. So please, Mr. Flake and Burza, hit us with the news.
So well, as it would be, I just returned from the Council of Elrond in Rivendell. You might know the place. And after conferring with the stewards of Gondor, the Prince of Mirkwood, and Gandalf himself, I can confirm that there are whispers from the mines of Moria that Dagon is absolutely not going to happen. 0% chance.
Yeah, that is epic. That is very epic, and you got everyone together, frankly. I mean, the last time that all those people got together was to destroy the One Ring, but now there are more important things. Just
you're looking for Dagon. Yeah. It's like, where's Waldo, but where's Dagon? Kind of like trying to pinpoint where he's at.
It's just an overhead shot of like that final battle at Minas Tirith with all the orcs and whatever, and then you're just looking through the crowd of orcs, and there he is right there. He's in the crowd.
Him.
Got him.
But yeah, he wasn't there apparently, so 0% chance.
0% chance. He's busy doing other things,
Yeah.
What are we gonna stop him?
Dagon stuff. Fish god stuff.
What am I, a doctor? Let him do what he wants. He's probably sipping a Mai Tai in Bermuda somewhere, enjoying the beach.
Exactly.
Leave him alone.
Enjoying life.
All right, way back machine time, and we went into the old time machine and went back to figure out what was going on in Gwent this week in history. Let's go back to... I'm going to go back to 2018.
2018.
Yeah, we're going back, man. That's 4 years ago. It felt like yesterday, but 2018 was when Challenger occurred in a salt mine, which is hilarious because salt and Gwent players mix so perfectly sometimes, but Challenger was in a salt mine. You were there. Tell us about that.
I was there, and I got to do a little like co-hosting gig in the beginning of the thing. It was in Wieliczka, which is fairly near Krakow, and we did there this Scoia'tael themed Challenger, because dwarves, mines, it all goes together. We had a lot of cosplayers there. We had Jorvit himself coming to that one, which was amazing. And it was one of the coolest locations because the thing that was most interesting was actually taking all the equipment and hauling it down all the way, I don't know how many feet down, into a salt mine. It was just like a real salt mine. And the funny part is that we only had like one part of the mine to ourselves, and the rest of it was pretty much open to public. So there were, like, when we were rehearsing and setting up, there were people like walking around, and because it's a tourist attraction here in Poland, so they were kind of going through and checking stuff out while we were there, setting up computers for a card game, which was like, who would have thought that could happen? It was very hard to get in there because, like I said, it is protected in some way because it's like, it's one of those places that is very iconic. Like you go there as a kid to learn about history, learn about the mine and kind of like how salt was extracted from that. And still you still can get salt out of there, but pretty much now it's just tourist attraction for people.
Which is amazing because these days the way that you extract salt is by playing guerrilla tactics or Nilfgaard. That's usually the best way to extract salt. Or Lippy.
Oh
yeah, that's easy. Squeeze the salt right out of it.
A lot of salt from those tiers.
Oh man, I think of all of them, I mean, my first foray into Gwent broadcasting with CDPR was at the Skellige one, and that to me was such a spectacle. There was like the fire show at the end, and the just all of the the flash and bang of having an entire village set up for these events. And
you hosted that one. It was awesome. I remember you hosting it, and then kind of your energy there was amazing. So
I had to impress.
Plus it was outside. That was the best part. We actually, you have this whole thing, like all the equipment which was necessary for the stream itself was kind of in like these metal containers that were kind of set up just for like a field trip, let's say, esports event. But all the cables and stuff was kind of going through just like a field because it's a fort that is close to Warsaw, and it is something that is used on the weekends for like Viking, like a Viking village type of thing where you can bring your kids and there's chickens running around, and we had chickens. There was like other farm animals there, so it was really cool.
There was that entire. First of all, there's a couple things about that that whole setup that were amazing. One was, we were like the whole village was set up, and I remember it was myself and Ashlis were on top of that like little tower area. And when we introduced it, there was supposed to be this shot of the drone going through the front gate, going up high, seeing everything going on. Everyone had their choreography down, which was really cool. That was awesome. The fact that there were just animals around during rehearsals and everything was pretty hilarious, and just seeing the kurchakis.
It was perfect.
It was great. It was awesome. And ultimately, that is where I think I kind of found my swagger when it came to interviewing people, because I had to interview so many people, and ultimately
you were very good with the questions.
Well, but eventually it got to a point where like you interview the same dude over and over. Like I interviewed Demorkis like 3 times, right? So you kind of you run out of things to ask them, particularly or specifically rather, because you've interviewed them so much. So that was the one where I just asked him, I'm like, do you like my Han Solo socks? And he just looks at them. He's like,
which was perfect.
I guess. I mean,
I think people enjoy that a little bit more when you kind of go off script and you go into funny things, because like how many times can you ask him about, the best plays, or why did he choose this deck versus this deck, or was he trying to counter this versus that? I mean, that's all fun and great if you're really like into that, but I mean, we have an analyst desk that will go through that stuff.
Sure.
And you as the interviewer, you can ask like, well, what's that dog behind you, like I do, or like, kind of just funny stuff. Like you can't be always asking like, what do you think about this opponent, or how you think your lineup will be against that guy. It's just to try to, do something different this time, right?
That's what I try to do. I mean, part of it is also the fact that it's, everyone's there to see the top level gameplay, obviously, but there's personalities behind those moves that they're making. So it's nice to learn a little bit of these people. And I knew that like Demorkis and I had spent a couple days together by then, and hanging out and having drinks and eating together and just enjoying each other's company. And then ultimately, when you become friends, it's easier to just sort of throw a curveball to that degree. Not to mention, there was a few situations where it's like, I'm sitting by the fire. There's a fire burning like later in the evening. There's like an owl next to me. And if there's a little slight gust of wind, as you're speaking, you just get this face full of smoke and you're trying to figure things out. Your eyes are burning. There's an owl staring you down like he's going to maul your face off. And you're like, all right, keep calm, composure, ask the right questions.
It was awesome, though. It's like being outside in the wilderness almost, kind of type of deal.
It was brilliant. And honestly, I mean, who knows what would have happened if COVID wasn't a thing and we had 2 years to continually perfect these. I still think that a wrestling-themed tournament would be what I want to put on. But hey.
Exactly. While still we had Tailbot, so everybody could bet on Tailbot that he's gonna just destroy everybody because he's like the god.
Yeah,
so
you just like
now he retired, but maybe we can still get him as a wild card. I don't know.
Oh, like a secret entrant into like a Royal Rumble. Like he comes in with the Money in the Bank case. It's like, oh my god, oh my, that's Tailbot with the briefcase. And he just
exactly.
And right after
the past, here we go.
Right after somebody wins an Open, he just comes in and cashes in his thing and just 1v1s them for the title. Oh man,
that would be really cool though. That would be really cool.
I'm telling you, I don't know how many more podcasts I have to do and tell people that it's a good idea, but people are like, shut up, Flake. We hear you. 2019 to this week in 2019, 3 years ago, the first ever expansion set for Gwent was released. That would be Crimson Curse, and I think it still stands as my favorite. I think Way of the Witcher is up there for me as well, but I think Crimson Curse might be my favorite set ever.
Yeah, I'm a Novigrad boy though. Novigrad introducing Syndicate, but yeah, this was an awesome. It was our first one. Introduced a lot of mechanics which are key right now. Well, maybe not all of them are key right now, but we had the introduction of poison, bleeding, shield, and vitality. So vitality for sure and bleeding are things that people play around with still. And yeah, we had these awesome 5 new leaders come to the game at that time, and then I remember we did those leader videos for them. And for us also internally, I remember it was a transition period where we were moving the Gwent team closer to the development team, so working closer with Jason and the rest of the gang. So yeah, it was fun times. For sure. And yeah, was a really cool expansion, and having Deathloop as the main theme, having a lot of vampires everywhere was super awesome. So
it was beautiful.
Yeah, fun memories.
The cards in that set were excellent as well. I mean, that's where you got things like like Deathloop and Consume was great back when Overwhelming Hunger was a 3 times consume option, which was cool. But I mean, let's be real here. There's just some of the mechanics that were introduced that are so prevalent and important today, like you said, bleeding, vitality, those are just come hand in hand. But the fact that poison was introduced, that I think I've mentioned this before and we've spoken about it, but poison was laughed at. For those who are not aware, I mean, if you're new to the game, poison was envisioned as a very low tempo garbage element to the game, kind of maybe even a toss in of a new keyword or whatever, a new status. But in reality, I think it was Pumpkin who just said, no, let's play around with this, and made a poison related Scoia'tael, and ultimately then Masquerade Ball came out and it was all over, and poison was an enormous factor.
Yeah, it was super good, and I also I think a lot of players took it for granted, but Pumpkin was playing around with it. And then, if you just had, he was playing Scoia'tael, so if you had 2 Dryads and pretty much, you could destroy the highest point unit easily. So
this was before Veil, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was before Veil. Yeah.
Yeah, so there you have it. Veil wasn't even a thing. Defenders, I don't think, were a thing. You had free reign with poison, and it really boggles my mind, because I come to think of it, you're looking at this, you're thinking, how was it that back then, without Veil, I don't even think was Purify a thing. I don't think Purify was a thing. I think there was only Remove Lock. I think that was there.
Lock was there.
So without Purify, without Defenders, and without Veil, people thought that poison was
not good,
was garbage. So without any of these fail safes, and then ultimately Defender comes in, Veil comes in, Purify comes in, all to kind of, obviously they do other things, but just to sort of counter the poison strategy, and poison was still strong. It's fascinating how these opinions kind of switch up. But all right, so today's episode,
100 cards, 31 neutral, 14 faction, per each faction 14, so 100 in total, and was really good.
What was your favorite card out of that set? I just out of curiosity.
I think it was Oriana at that time. I really liked that card. Anything pretty much, all the vampires that gave bleeding. I also was happy because we introduced Sienna there. So there were also a lot of cards which were Artorias Vigo was there also, a lot of cards which were tied to Blood and Wine, and I love Blood and Wine. It's my favorite expansion for The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. So it was just perfect. The theme was just perfect, and all the versions of Deathloop and Blood Moon was introduced then. I mean, good times.
There was a lot of good times. It was just really. I think it was a well fleshed out set. The theme was on point, and everything just was. Everything was great. I had a thought there, and now I lost it. So but that happens very often. Well.
Yeah, I get you. I have the same thing. I'm on this train of thought, but then I start talking about something and I forget. It's
it'll come to me like at 9 p.m. tonight when I'm like practicing for a pro quest or something like that, and all of a sudden I'll be like, "Oh, right, Regis." And they're like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Write to me about it.
I will. I'll always write to you. You know that. Every now and then I send you a message just telling you I love you, just like that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's really amazing. We should start a page.
It's amazing because not many people do it.
Well, I'm of the mindset that there's no reason that you shouldn't tell someone that you love them. If you love them, you love them. Just tell them. It's because they might forget. Yeah. So what is there to lose? So
nothing. There's a lot to gain, though.
Our favorite card games, and we always bleed into these topics very often because we've played so many card games, and you and I have even last episode talked about how after I don't recall this, but I beat you at Gwent and apparently was very trigger happy on the emotes in that game. You then returned and absolutely posterized me in Magic. But our favorite card games, we've played so many, and I know that for myself. Oh, I remember what I was supposed to say. Oh, bingo. That's what I wanted to talk about. We're going to rewind a little bit here. When you mentioned Sienna, I remember that I have 2 videos on my YouTube. I don't do YouTube anymore, really. But I had a video which was, I think it was 5 or 6 cards that never made it to print. And one of those cards was a version of Sienna that wasn't an order effect, it was an ambient effect. It was like as long as Sienna was on the board, all of your deploy effects were doubled. So it was a constant thing. So that was a card that got really out of hand. But if you dig deep enough in my YouTube, you can find 2 videos of that are like top 5 cards that never got printed, and some of them are ridiculous. All right, favorite card games ever. You and I, we talk about them so many times. I've played easily 20 different card games. Some of them like just once, but at least 10 of them I've put many hours into to play. And I just want to ask you one thing. This was a question that was actually sent in via Twitter DM from Aditya Malia, who often sends in questions, and they want to know, basically, where did Gwent get its name? And I said, I don't know if Pavel knows that, but I can definitely ask, because I certainly have no idea.
It was briefly mentioned once in one of the books that is pretty much saying that it was a dwarven card game. It was Gwent in Polish because that was when the original text came from. And then we localized it to English and other languages, but got its name Gwent. But like Gwent, which came from Sapkowski's books, was pretty much all they said was it was a dwarven card game that if you lose, you get hit with a stick, and that was kind of that was everything that was explained about the card game itself. So you lose, you get hit by a stick. So yeah, that's where the name came from originally. So it came from the book. So it's you can say it's more or less lore accurate. Of course, it was fine-tuned to fit the English language as well as other languages in which Gwent is localized, which I think there's like 11 or 12 total. So quite a lot.
Well, you get hit with a stick. Sometimes it feels like that when you're playing. Yep. And your last card in your deck is your Siege, which just sits there beautifully.
And nothing happens.
So in terms of like favorite card games, we've played so many. What are some of the more obscure card games that you've ever played? I have so many weird and wacky ones that I've tried that actually they're not like flash in the pan kind of. They were actual card games that people would play, and they just went defunct and no one played them. But I'm just curious about you, because I know that you've played lots of Magic. You've played Magic with me, and I'm wondering if there's anything else that you've ever dipped your toe into.
Like I think that the worst card game I ever played is just like traditional like card game like poker or something like that. Maybe really? Oh, no, actually poker I enjoy, but like other ones that feature like normal cards, like there's War where you just like throw cards one on top of the other and it's nothing really happens. That one I didn't really like. I played Pokemon, the card game, as a kid. I played, of course, like Magic was my first one because that was back in middle school, if I remember correctly. Then after that, yeah, I played a little bit of Pokemon when I came back here to Poland, because Pokemon was the thing at that time. But for me, like the most important thing with that card game was pretty much just collecting cards. I like collecting cards. just for the like collection value. There was also like these small cards which I was collecting, which were like Dragon Ball Z cards, because I loved Dragon Ball Z as a kid. But I don't think I played it in any way. I don't know if you had also the ability to play them, because they were like cards that you collected from bags of chips and stuff like that. So I don't think they were something that you would play at the time. And apart from that, I pretty much, it was MTG and Gwent. Like, these are the two card games that I've been kind of going back and forth. To be quite frank, I never played Artifact. I remember I got Artifact on Steam. Never played it, and it's still in my library.
This was going to be the CCG to end all CCGs. This was the CCG killer, like
the big Kahuna.
Yeah,
that was supposed to come and like wipe the whole CCG market.
Pour one out for everyone who's still there for the long haul. My cheers to you, friends. I have
I'm gonna take a sip of water.
Yeah, I have a little bit of I don't know if I've mentioned this before. I probably have. I don't know to you, but my disdain for that game came from certain people from the community, whom shall remain nameless. Not who you think, by the way. That basically would on one tweet. I'd stop me if I've said this before, but like on one tweet would talk about how the economy for the game was so dynamic and so welcoming, because you could go and pay real money for one particular card you wanted through the Steam marketplace. But then an hour later, they're tweeting about how they bought every single copy of a particular card so that they can make tons of money and scalp those cards. So you're like, it was literally like, F you jerk. Yeah. Like, you're literally an hour ago, you're talking about how it's free market. You want a card, why open packs, spend like $2 to get that one super rare card you want, and then your deck is complete. It's saving you money. And then a tweet later, like, I have 40 copies of this. I just cleaned out the entire marketplace. I'm listing them one at a time for like $30 a piece. So it's like, you jerk. Like, that's what turned me off from it, was some of the hypocrisy of that community. I played the game. I played Artifact. I thought Artifact was a very, very brainy game, and it was enjoyable. However, I had like streaming the game, watching the game being streamed. No. This was, it was a game where, first of all, the RNG elements to it were a little bit tilting to a degree. But the game itself, I thought, was pretty decent. It just had very little appeal from a spectator perspective, because you couldn't, like, if you look at, let's say you look at a Hearthstone board or a Gwent board or a Magic board, you can kind of, to a degree, assess immediately what the situation is. You look at if you look at an Artifact board, first of all, you're looking at one of 3 boards that exist, and you have no clue what the hell's going on. So it was difficult to get into. The sort of the price of entry from a pocket perspective may have been okay, but from like a mental perspective was really taxing.
Yeah, it was difficult to understand that. Even when people were streaming it and trying to explain like every play that they did, you still did not get like, how is this 3 things supposed to come to one? How do I understand this? The only thing I liked about it is they introduced these animated little like fluffy, like, you know, avatar pets things that they had there. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, those were nice.
Apart from that, it was super difficult to understand the game. So, and I think, one thing is they had scalpers, which is something that also happens in MTG. Like, people buy out cards like crazy, which are worth like, I don't know, a couple cents, and then their price goes up to a couple bucks. But still, I feel like they have it more contained, because it's there. The marketplace was inside the game, so it was much easier just to like pull it all from one source. While MTG, millions of people are opening packs everywhere, and they're selling it on card markets and stuff like that. So it's much more manageable, and prices don't change so dynamically. While here it was just crazy. And I also think they wanted to be competitive, but the problem is, like, if you wanted to play competitive, you had to like also pay for it or something like that. I don't remember exactly how it was, but there was something also there which wasn't like 100% that people were complaining about.
It was like fascinating, kind of just how it was marketed to a degree, and a lot of the marketing came from the fact that there was a lot of top tier players in the world that were known for other games that were lured is not the word. I don't want to say lured, but they were interested in the game, and they were given an opportunity to be sort of part of the marketing process for the game itself, and they were the front facing element to sell the game. And from that perspective, that's where the tweets of like, where people are like, oh, it seems like an expensive game to get into. No, it's not. It's blah, 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 blah. Like you could tell when they were trying to market the game, and you could tell when they were just themselves trying to show off about, you know, how they're gaming the system. So it was a little bit two-faced in that degree, which really turned me off. I played the game. I played about 40 or 50 hours of the game privately. I've streamed like 3 hours of it until I realized that nobody was following along or understood, and it was hard for me to explain. They had a really good like marketing campaign for it. They also had Richard Garfield on it. Garfield was the guy who originally was the creator of Magic and kind of worked on the balance in the beginning of the game. So yeah, and plus it was backed by Valve, so everybody was saying like, yeah, this is the card game killer. It's gonna come, it's just gonna destroy the market, it's gonna be #1. I remember everybody was afraid at the time. We were like wondering like what's gonna happen with it. I think people over at Blizzard were also thinking about like if it's gonna jump over Hearthstone and stuff like that. But it turns out like later in the development that I think they kind of got into a place like streaming was difficult. The esports part wasn't really going for them, so it kind of went away. And the only thing that remains right now is like how many people are playing artifact.com. I think there's that website is still up, so you can check their current number of players. There's like the game itself was good and all. And when you talk about Richard Garfield also created a game that came after Magic called BattleTech. I don't know if you ever heard of BattleTech. It was like a mech-based game where you kind of had lands, but it was a little bit of a cleaned up mana system in the sense that, like, for instance, if you have a Land War Elf, but you have a mountain in hand, you cannot play the Land War Elf because it needs a forest to be played. Whereas in BattleTech, the Land War Elf would have 2 costs. It would have the forest cost, and it would have the cost of like 2 other things. So it's like, okay, you could either pay for it with one forest or 2 of anything else. So you weren't always screwed hunting for a particular land. There was a little bit of a cushion, a little bit of leeway given to you if you can't draw correctly. And the battle mechanics were a little bit faster. Minions or creatures had speeds, like the mechs had a speed. So a medium speed mech couldn't attack a fast speed mech because it would technically couldn't catch it, but the fast speed mechs were typically weaker, and you could attack your opponent's deck, which was their life source, or you could attack their mechs, or you could also attack their lands, which were cool. And then what was awesome about it is that you could put a mech as a guard for particular resources you have or your deck. So if you had a slow mech, usually your slow tanks would guard your decks. And then what's cool about it too is that the mechs had like standard damage and they had missile damage. So missiles can fire over things, but you had to roll dice to see if the missiles would hit or whatever. So I think that the combat for it was amazing. I think that it was in my opinion, it's a superior game to Magic, but it just didn't get the same blast off. But it was a Richard Garfield game. But what I want to get at here is the fact that when you guys were talking about how, when Artifact came through and you guys were, I don't say necessarily worried, but it was on your radar when Artifact was around. I feel like Gwent itself is a completely different game than everything else. I don't say everything else out there, but there are very few games that can really disassociate themselves from the same framework that Magic has, that Hearthstone has, that Mythgard has, that Legends of Runeterra has, that minion combat, go face, kind of thing. Gwent isn't like that, and that's why I feel like the appeal of Gwent is always going to be, it's an evergreen effect where it's never going away, because it's always a different option. Does it appeal to everybody? Probably not, but it is always a much different option than everything else. Yeah, I think the lack of the mana system plus the provision system itself when it comes to like balancing is also something unique. The limit of cards that you can have in your hand also, like, I mean, you have that in Magic, like you're limited to 7 unless a card lets you have more than that, but also the amount of cards that you're drawing between rounds. Plus, I mean, Gwent got so many changes throughout the years that, I mean, a lot of these things kind of happened later than in the beginning. But I always remember that, row limitations and stuff like that, also something that was introduced later. I mean, we can unpack all these things and talk for days about them, but I think just not having a mana system and being based off of just
raw power would made total sense. And then we were kind of balancing things out, having the provision limits, having the the amount of golds, and we used to have silvers, now we don't, just golds and bronze cards and stuff like that. So yeah, no go phase, nothing like that. So you're not doing damage in anywhere. You're just pretty much who gets the most amount of points. The only damage you can do is to destroy other cards, so your opponent doesn't get as many points as you do. But yeah, I feel like it's always been unique in its sense, and yeah, I think it just brought something different, something that it's very hard to compare on anything else that was on the market. One card game which we got a lot of comparison to was Condottiere, which was kind of like a board game based card game, which was quite similar to what Gwent is, but a little bit different. But yeah,
my favorite games of all time are ones that don't have the life total system that are associated with it. I mean, Star Wars CCG didn't have a life total system. It wasn't a matter of that. It was about controlling territory. It was about having an edge in various one-on-one battles. There was a lot more intricate elements to it. Lord of the Rings TCG is, the more I review it and the more I look at it, I thought it was a beautiful game that really captured what Lord of the Rings was. Your objective is to get to Mount Doom with Frodo surviving so that he could deposit the ring in. And every you go from site 1 to site 7 or 9, is it site 9, and as you're traversing, you're starting from the Shire, where like it's basically very simple to go through. You go through Khazad-dûm and the Bridge of Khazad-dûm in Moria, and then you're through to like Isengard, and then you're through to Mordor. And like as you're trekking through, you're adding people to your troop, you're getting allies, you're equipping them, but so are like the enemy is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And what's beautiful about this game was that you played both sides. Your opponent also has their own fellowship as they're going and following you with their own fellowship, and so you're drawing, like, they're called shadow cards. You're drawing shadow cards and fellowship cards. So eventually it's one of those situations like, am I ahead in the race, or do I need to slow them down? Do I get rid of my fellowship cards to bolster? So the strategy of it was beautiful. The way that it was played was, it wasn't a life total system. It was so strategic, but it felt like Lord of the Rings, as much as Star Wars felt like Star Wars. Like, it was, the characters in Star Wars were so flavorful, and like the personas of Darth Vader, like there was a Darth Vader card that could force choke and just kill a weaker opponent. You had like a Han Solo was able to manipulate luck and dice rolls, so to speak. There were no dice rolls in it, but you were able to get an extra shot at like an element of RNG, like a smuggler's luck kind of thing. And and you know, something like Leia would have an ambient effect where all of your other leaders were stronger because of her like leadership, so to speak. So it was beautiful in that regard, and it was very flavorful and true to the lore. And I feel like, I mean, I don't know much about Witcher, but Gwent to me, from a rule point, from a card game perspective, is so attractive because it tears away from that typical framework. It always seems like whenever a card game is developed, it's always like, okay, so we're going to start with 20 life, right? And then where do we go from there?
Yeah. I don't like that some card games are just trying to, like, even from a visual standpoint, they're trying to be another card game, and they don't try to do something different when it comes like to the gameplay, to the visuals, anything. Like, it would be nice if you're bringing something fresh to the table instead of trying to mimic what's already out there, because I think, like, players who have something similar will more likely stick to that game instead of trying a new title which might not appeal to them in terms of like the universe it's set or the art or whatever. But yeah, I think also, like, if you're really into card games, I think that the most important thing that you're kind of focusing on are the mechanics themselves, and kind of how the game plays, how it flows, and if you're having fun. Because I mean, if you're having fun and you're learning something, it's always worth your while.
So what would you say would be your like number one? Like, if you were to rank like your top 5 ever, what would they be?
Like, for me, always MTG and Gwent will be the number ones. Gwent because I got to work on it. I've got to be throughout the process for the last 6 years, like sitting and watching the game develop, sitting and watching some mistakes which were made, and also some good decisions which were made. Having my card in the game is just still something that I always consider as being incredible. It's always something that I think about. So I don't take that for granted easily. And Magic, just because that was the first card game that I really played, so it was like a first collectible card game. So it kind of got me on the path. But I really also enjoy like deck building games, because me and Dominica, my wife, we can play it. We like play Star Realms, for example. We have this DC deck builder game in which you have like DC heroes plus equipments that you collect, and then you defeat the bad guys and you collect the bad guys, and whoever has the most points at the end wins. So that's also something that we can play, because she's very into board games and card games. So she's kind of introducing me to all these other card games, because I'm kind of like a stubborn player when it comes, like, I'm not very big on board games and trying like new card games, because I feel like already with Magic and Gwent there's like too much already.
Yeah,
I'm trying to add something on top of that. So it's like I cannot focus on so many things at once. But yeah, she helps me like get into all these things which I haven't checked out. And like Star Realms, for example, was cool. I also used to play Netrunner when it was a thing. So I think that was also that one had really cool gameplay with like the ice in order to protect like specific cards and stuff like that. I think that was really cool.
There's
and then hacking and getting stuff, that was awesome.
That's the Cyberpunk one, right?
Yes. Yeah,
I had
still have cards for that one.
No idea what the hell that was. So it was actually mentioned to me recently, and I was like, oh, what is that? They're like, Cyberpunk. I'm like, oh.
They have an awesome community, very passionate, and people were like petitioning for a long time for someone to, like, I think Fantasy Flight was the owner, and then they closed it out at some point, and people were like, trying to get that to become a thing. And I remember watching some of the tournaments that they had for that. It was very, very cool and very interesting. And from a like gameplay perspective, it was something totally different. So yeah, I know they had like a lot of people who were very fond of the game and really liked it. So it was a very passionate community around it. So Dux is not around anymore because they had a lot of expansions and stuff like that. And when it comes to collecting cards, they were pretty much condensed, because you would just buy like expansion packs which featured all the cards, which was easy, right?
Yeah, just get them all taken care of in one fell swoop. And
yeah.
Gwent for me is certainly a top 5 all time for me. It's, again, and a lot of this is just going to come from a theme, the fact that it's unique in terms of what it does, and the layers of strategy to it are very important. The fact that it's 3 rounds means that there's opportunity to recover, there's opportunity to be strategic in the Gwent like intro videos or the ads and the marketing videos that they send out. It's like, have a strategic retreat or whatever, like you have that kind of like lose the battle to win the war, so to speak. So there's a lot of that to it. My favorite game all time is, and I've mentioned this 1,000 times, is Star Wars CCG. Nothing will ever capture me and engulf me in terms of strategy and whatever. There was a pocket of time where that game was brilliant, and then you want to talk about power creep just launched. Like when the company that makes it, called Decipher, when they lost their license for it, their last set, they had to make it attractive, so they basically made like this set where every card was bonkers busted and legal to play, so everyone needed to buy them in order to be able to continue to compete. Same thing happened with Lord of the Rings. When Decipher lost Lord of the Rings, they put out stuff, but like in the time when they were regularly putting out cards and balancing stuff and whatever, dear Lord, were those 2 card games, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, were the absolute masterclass of how to create a unique card game. After that, I think it's a tie for me of Gwent and Flesh and Blood. I think those 2 games are phenomenal. Flesh and Blood dives into that framework of life totals, so it's a little bit different, but the mana system, how it's managed, and the strategy, and to me, what really attracts me to that as well is that every single hero that you play feels and plays very different from one another. So if you can master one, it doesn't mean that you can pick up another and be good with it. You're going to be back to square one. So it's a very, very skill and practice intensive game. And then obviously there's Gwent. Gwent to me is it's part of my fiber of my being right now. I've played thousands and thousands of hours, thousands and thousands of matches, and I always feel like there's ways to improve, and I always feel like there's an extra little layer that I can peel back to discover more about it, and I'm always eager to learn. And to me, though I'm not a competitor in the game, I appreciate the highest level of this game, though I can achieve the top 200s in pro rank, when I put my time into it, but easy. I'm more, easy, not easy.
You're easy. Come on, you're a good card game player. You're just selling yourself short.
But to me, the joy comes in seeing how others figure out these layers, discover this new territory, right? I had a discussion most recently about watching some of the best players in the world and how they see things differently. And I remember the story that I told, some of them were like Magic, like they're Magic pros and whatever, and they're saying like, you never seen a Magic player until you've seen someone do this, or this player do whatever. And I said, yeah, I had a moment like that at a broadcast when I saw somebody where Colomone won a round down 2 cards and bled when it looked like it was like an absolute silly thing to do, but with all of Colomone's poise, confidence, razor-edged focus, he bled down 2 cards and won that game. And I said, that is somebody that I already knew that he was a great player, but that is just that extra little piece of respect that you throw at them. So an amazing experience.
Incredible how they play the game. Like I feel like based off how I play any card game, like I know the basics, I know how to pilot it. But if you pilot something for such a long time and then you get, a matchup which is not favorable, but you do something that your opponent does not expect, like the amount of let's say flexibility that you can have with a given deck or a given archetype is just incredible. And I love that. And I love that about any card game. Like you can sometimes get out of a bad situation with some weird plays, and they actually stick and they work. Is like when you get that, is like, oh my god, that felt so good, right? It's just incredible.
It's gorgeous. All right, we could talk about this as always forever and ever, but
there's many card games that I think we both kind of tried and played. Also the ones that are digital and the ones that are just paper or board gamey like. So those are also fun. Yeah, so try everything.
Yeah, you never know what's gonna catch your fancy, as it were. There's a lot of hidden gems out there that are even if you just play them for a bit or casually, again, if you're getting a good good feeling out of it, by all means dive in.
If you're enjoying it, play it.
Yeah. All right. Well, in a couple minutes, we'll be joined by Alias V, Tia, and Seely to discuss a little bit of some important topics. But before we do that, we have the Babcia Marysia Polish word of the week. Yes, everyone's favorite babcia, or adopted babcia. She would take you all in, by the way, absolutely 100%, and feed you all. I have so many stories about food and my babcia, but for now, that we'll save those for another day. Today's Polish word of the week, courtesy of Babcia Marysia, is kartofelki
Smażone.
Smażone, that's it, yes. Kartofelki smażone, and I know kartofelki, but you got to hit me up with a little kartofelki smażone here in a little context. Basically, again, we're all at Babcia's house, playing outside. Dinner is in about 2 hours. We ate maybe 2 hours before, but nope, we need to be fed again. So
seems legit.
So she says, Mateusz, and I'm like, yes, Babcia. Kartofelki smażone? So what does that mean? Talk to me.
Those are pretty much fried potatoes.
Just
because,
the best.
Us Polish people, we eat potatoes in multiple ways. Like they can be boiled, they can be baked. And sometimes when you have like boiled potatoes, like you boil them the day before or you bake them and then you want to eat them the next day and you want to, turn it up a little bit, because they've already been boiled. You just throw them on a pan, put some olive oil or butter, and just kind of, fry them up a little bit. And it's just like we love eating potatoes in multiple ways. Like we're the land of tabula, which is onions, and kartofle, which are potatoes.
I love it. It's basically what I used to eat all the time. Basically, I I couldn't, when I was very, very young, I couldn't say kartoffelki, so I used to call them lekkies. So I used to love corn, and potatoes was like my favorite. So I used to call them cornies and lekkies. So I used to always ask my babcia for cornies and lekkies. And and then, yeah, kartoffelki smażone was like the best. And even to this day, when I go visit my parents in Montreal and I'm staying there for a couple days, it'll be like, 10 p.m. or something like that, and I'm on the couch with my parents just watching TV, relaxing, and my mom will be like, "You hungry?" I'm like, "I mean, I could eat." She's like, "Kartoffelki smażone?" I'm like, "Ring a bell, baby. That's the magic word. Here we go." It was the best. And my sister was always naleśniki. My sister loved naleśniki.
Man, I'm a naleśniki guy myself, and I love making them. I have a daughter she's 7. I still love making naleśniki for her, and she loves the hell out of them. And I love making them because they're very easy to do. It's just a little bit of flour, a little bit of milk, and 1 egg, and that's it. And you just whisk it up, throw it on a pan, like try to do them as thin as possible. Just add a little bit of like carbonated water so they get like bubbly, so they're very airy, let's say, but still flat and airy. And then like making those with like some good like homemade jam is just like it's the best.
Dude, that is, you got like the secret recipe. You got like the cheat codes now for.
Yeah, of course, man. Yeah, I've made them for so many years, and I love them, and my daughter loves them, so I know the recipe by heart.
Yeah, it's like you got like the game genie for naleśniki.
With naleśniki, you gotta hold your own, man.
All right, here's a little babcia Marysia food story before we go to the panel. So
let's go.
I used to go there once a week to cut my babcia's grass, and when I went there once, and like I would usually go after lunch, so I had eaten, and so as I'm mowing the lawn, she stops me and she's like, "Do you want some food?" And I said, "Well, I'm not really that hungry." She's like, "Well, come." So I go inside and she's like, "Do you want this?" And it was like a big steak, but it was like a steak that was in the fridge that was like cooked to all hell. And I'm like, no, it's all good. I'm fine. I don't like, I didn't want it. It was like a tough ass steak. And I was like, I'm all right. It's fine. She's like, "Okay, well, if you want, like, let me know what you want and it's all good." So I finished cutting the grass and I'm downstairs. She's like, "Let me make you something to eat." She's like, "What do you want?" So she always had, like, when we were young, we used to love, like, Chef Boyardee. So she's like, she always have cans of Chef Boyardee. I'm like, "Well, just make me a can of Chef Boyardee, and that's what I want." I'm like, "Okay." So I'm watching TV downstairs, and she's like, "Okay, it's ready." And she comes and brings it to me, and the Chef Boyardee is on a plate. And and I'm like, and it's, like, piled, like, really high. I'm like, how many...
surprise inside.
How many ravioli can they shove in a can? I was like, absolutely. I was like, God damn, okay. Not to mention, I'm like, all right. And then I'm like, why is there a knife? Like, why is she giving me a knife? I'm like, okay. So I go to like grab one, and I put my fork in and I pull out the entire whole steak that she hid underneath the ravioli. And I go upstairs and I'm like, "Babcia, I didn't want this." And she's like, she's like, "Oh, where'd that come from?" Like, she pretended like like it was in the can. Like, she pretended like that. She's like, "Oh,
surprise,
I
surprise."
don't." She's like, "That I make what you ask." I said, "You sneaky bitch. Like, how did you do that?" Like,
it was Chef Boyardee, but with a little bit of, protein in it.
Just a little bit. No, she absolutely.
You can't be all carbs. Ravioli and sauce, man. It's got to get some meat in there. I thought in the beginning when you were telling the story that she cut it up to like small pieces and kind of added it to it.
No.
She just didn't even do that. Dude. She just put the whole thing and just flooded it with the ravioli.
Oh yeah, Gordon Ramsay, eat your heart out, man. She put like day old cooked to hell steak hidden under a layer of Chef Boyardee, and then played it off like she had no freaking idea where it came from. She's like, I don't know. I'm like, all right, calm down.
Someone's got to eat that. And that was you.
Yeah, that was me. All right, that has been the Babcia Marysia Polish word of the week, courtesy of Babcia Marysia. So no mailbag this week. We do have a panel coming around the corner, and our sponsor this week, Pavel, is
Blue Jeans.
Blue Jeans Cafe and Bar up in Gdańsk. Exactly. Go check them out.
Exactly. Check him out. Yeah.
Flurza 15.
We are yet to check him out.
No.
Yeah. Flurza 15. Use the code. You might get something off, or they'll just kick you out.
Dude.
Probably they'll just kick you out, saying like, "Who are these people?"
Yeah. They're like, get out of here, you psychos. All right. Yeah. Go check it out. Say Flurza 15. Say Mateusz from Montreal, and you will absolutely get looked at funny. But we'll be right back, friends, with the panel instead of the Q&A. But promise you guys, this is going to be worth it. We'll see you in just a second.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. As promised, we have a special segment on the Flurza podcast. This time, we have lovely guests from around the world. Like we're just talking, we're from literally around the world. But yeah, two Canadians here, so I kind of feel like we're Poland is being underrepresented, but still. We had a question last week posted by Miss Aldona. And we wanted some specialists here on the topic. So we got this beautiful gang here. And the question was, hello, thank you for a wonderful show/podcast. How do you think that is that there are no females in the Gwent tournaments? Despite many talented female streamers, it seems like only boys are willing to grind. Why do you think there is such a difference? So we have Alias, we have Seely, and we have Thea to answer this question. So whoever wants to start, take it away.
Alias, you began with Gwent, right? And like a lot of this conversation also is the fact that it's asking for more of a competitive scene. And I just want to preface this as well as the fact that Radu Andrada was in a top 8 tournament. So it's not like that as a threshold that hasn't been busted through yet. So, Alias, you start us off because you started with Gwent as well, and you've moved on to Magic, and you're on a Magic broadcaster, but you're also an excellent player. So let's go. Let's start with you, Alias.
That's a bit of an oversell there, but thank you, friend. Yeah, I was actually thinking about this morning, and I might go on a bit of a tangent here, so just feel free to rein me in whenever I've spoken too much. But I think the fact of the matter is that it comes down to people's perceptions of a game, and a lot of the time people see things like card games, competitive esports, that sort of thing, as a boys' club. And, sometimes non-males just don't have the courage or the support structure to get into a competitive scene. Like, if you think about all the testing groups and stuff, they're predominantly male. There's a couple in Magic now that have started up where they've got the female players and the non-binaries and, all the other marginalized genders joining in together to try and support each other. And I think that's, in essence, what needs to happen for there to be a shift in the makeup of these tournaments, is there needs to be more of a support structure for these players to get in there and to, get the support, get the sponsorships, get the teams together to be able to put as much time and effort in that we do see a lot of the male players doing, I think it's also a fair bit easier for them to be able to put off work and school and whatever else that they need to do to be able to focus their time and energies and efforts on that. So, it's not saying that there's a lack of good players, far from it. It's just there's these stumbling blocks that are in the way for them to be able to get to the same level that these guys are at. So, yeah, I think that's my first point in a bigger nutshell.
Yeah, I have to totally agree. Like, looking from the perspective of actually working with the community, like there's a lot of like people who are instantly saying like, oh, you cannot be playing this because you're a female. Like, literally, like, this is what you're hit with, which totally doesn't make sense. And of course, what I really don't like, I mean, there is this rule, like if there's 100 people, there's like 5 people who will like you to bits. There's 5 people who will hate you because of reasons, or because they don't know better, or because they envy you or stuff like that. And then there's 90 people who's like the silent majority, which love what you're doing. but the 5 people that are like super vocal are saying like, no, she cannot be doing this. And plus I think you also like, whenever you see any like in games, any like female present, instantly it's like, no, this is a boys club, she shouldn't be doing this. And you know, you get made fun of for, I don't know, the way you speak or the way you behave in front of a camera. And it's just, it always like bugs me so much, and I hate it. Because
like,
you know,
every
like I said,
broadcast.
yeah, it's just a boys club. But once someone actually, but once someone that goes and breaks that barrier, and once you break that barrier, people are like, oh, she's actually doing an awesome job, and they kind of start thinking like, oh, you know, she's bringing a lot more to, I don't know, the cast or to the competition or whatever. And they start recognizing you, but before that, they're instantly like judging you, which is like the worst thing that can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to segue into, I guess, kind of what Burza touched on, which is relatable role models and inspiration, kind of idol type people. And Flake also mentioning Radu in the beginning here, which is a little bit more Gwent related, I suppose. But I think once someone breaks that, when someone does it, that can inspire so many other people to do something similar that previously thought, oh, I can't do that. Like personally for me, I remember watching, I was playing Gwent, but I wasn't part of the community, the online community yet. I watched Radu in the open play against Freddy, and she did so amazing that not long after that, I wanted to stream. I wanted to play even more. I wanted to try to get to pro rank at the time, things like that. So yeah, it's a huge impact that people can have on other people. And in this topic, we're talking about non-males as well, to inspire other parts of the player base.
And just to add on to what you said there, sometimes I forget that I am not the norm in broadcasting or streaming or anything like that. Like, for myself personally, I've never had an issue with jumping in and playing with the boys. You know, I grew up as a tomboy. I went and beat them up, that sort of thing. I played on boys' teams because I wanted to play cricket when I was in primary school, but there were no girls' teams, so I played with the boys and kicked most of their asses, right? Like, for me, I've never experienced that, oh, you're a girl, you can't. But I sometimes forget that other people aren't as lucky as I've been growing up. So yeah, I sometimes forget that, you know, I have this innate responsibility to be a good representation for, you know, women in card games or esports or whatever, and to just, you know, show them that, hey, you can do it. Like, don't listen to the naysayers or the haters, because they're small and pathetic and they couldn't even imagine doing what you're trying to do. So yeah, I think it is important for women in esports and gaming just to build each other up. You know, none of this petty bullshit squabbles. Oh, you got more viewers than me or whatever. I don't know. You know, none of that crap. It's we need to work together to make us become the norm. You know, like the boys have been for so long. So yeah.
I can add on to that. I also I agree with everything you're saying. I feel like it all stems from the same root cause, which is the fact that, I don't know, back in the day when the internet wasn't really a thing, boys were gamers and girls didn't really game. So I got a PlayStation 1 from my grandmother for some reason, and I was hooked. But then again,
granny.
Yeah, none of my female friends played games. So I wasn't friends with the boys. So I had no context for what was the gaming world. I had none of that. I just did my own thing. And now, as we became streamers, I saw that there's actually this huge community. And also for me, I saw Jagger's casting. I also saw the female representation there in the top 8. And it was like, okay, there's a shot here for us if we want to. And I think this will solve itself within the next decade, I hope, with all the young girls who see other girls now streaming, so they're playing games. But it's super important for us to at least open that way for them to make it seem like it's normal. And I feel the criticism from the small minority of guys, it's because there's so little female representation that they think, oh, well, why are you doing this? What made you come here? You're not good at the game. It's because you're a girl, right? That's why you're casting. That's why you're not good enough to play the game. But I also think there are just so little females in gaming right now. The chances of them becoming good at the game compared to the majority pool of male players is just statistically smaller. It's not that they lack you know, skill per se. It's just there are less of them competing. So I think that's at least my theory at this point in time.
There's a connection as well from the fact that there's a competitive aspect to it and just making a top 8. And the question itself is more so oriented towards the competitive landscape and why there's not many females in the competitive landscape. But if we take a look at this, there are so many females that are successful in the broadcasting element, in the that, you know, part of it. And what if people need to understand is that if you're on the broadcasting element, you're not necessarily focused too much on the competitive part, but you still have to be a pretty damn good player to be doing what you're doing. And this is one thing that I've always witnessed, and it is always terrible. And like I've you know, I have also faced a little bit of issue when it came down to when I replaced Mogwai on the casting team. There was always that first initial pushback of who the hell is this guy? He's not what I'm used to, blah, blah, blah. But I eventually break through that. But I feel like for females in this industry, that never goes away. And I've seen it with Jaggerus and some of the criticism that she got. I see it with other people that this is unfair immediate response, that there's that the way that these jobs are acquired are not necessarily through merit, they're through quota. And I really want you guys to talk about that part as well, because I feel like this is a very important topic, because I have worked with Tia, I've worked with Sealy, and I've worked with Alias. Alias used to do I forgot what the name of that your Magic tournament was, but you and I have casted Magic together.
The Super Spiffy tournament.
The Super Spiffy tournament. That was one of my first forays into casting Magic, and her and I would cast those little events where we were side by side, and it would be great. And both of us were just having a good time, but Alias was really freaking good at what she did. Tia, really knowledgeable, really good at what she does. Sealy always impresses me every single time that she's doing this. So people need to understand, like, once you get past that and just realize what the skill set is that you need to understand, it's not just that you have a good voice and that you could come up with fun puns and stuff like that. That's not the part. It's the fact that you have the knowledge of the game and you can go through. I am willing to believe that any one of these three people here, not you, Pavel, sorry, that put in the time can attain those types of levels. It's just sometimes that's not what you want to do. And there is obviously a skew towards males in terms of just the sheer amount of numbers from demographic perspective of, so there's going to be more males that are getting there, but it's not like there's talent that the talent doesn't exist, because we are here with 3 of the top in the world, and that is inspiring in itself. But I just want to sort of maybe pivot the conversation a little bit from that perspective of some of the challenges you guys face as broadcasters, and maybe some of the criticism that might be unwarranted.
All right, let me add this one. Right. So, I kind of just fell into commentating. It wasn't a thing I was actively pursuing. It wasn't even on my radar. Wizards of the Coast decided, hey, let's just toss her into the booth and see what happens. I had no experience. Now, they're crazy for doing that. They've admitted that to me several times. They were like, yeah, we're lucky it didn't blow up in our faces. And, you know, I'm very grateful that it didn't, because now I have a completely separate career, separate income stream, and a separate passion that when I am not interested in competing in the game, which is, you know, sometimes when the meta gets stale, we've all been there. That, for me, is another thrill. It's another thing to sink my teeth into and get better at every time. So, I still don't know why they picked me. I'm happy they did. But the one thing that I never want anyone to assume is that I was picked because I'm a girl. And now that may well be the case. And I have to prove every single time I'm on the broadcast that I deserve my seat. And I've done that for the past 3 years. I've been picked every single time to be in the booth. I am one of the go-tos for the Magic commentary, and I am eternally grateful for that. But I know that I have to work my ass off far more than any other individual in my situation, you know, any other new commentator would have to, because I have all that criticism coming at me. So the one thing I never want to have happen, though, in this situation, you know, trying to get more female representation in the games, I never want people to be thrown into a situation where they're set up to fail. That's why I'm hoping that companies, organizations, teams will invest in trying to diversify things, and to get them to the point where if they are invited to an invitational or something like that, like the Mythic Invitational that Wizards of the Coast have done, that they are not just going to sink straight away. we want good representation. We want to see good players. We don't want to see someone fail on the big stage. And that's just like harpooning something before it even gets a chance to go. So yeah, there's a lot of criticism. There's a lot of, she's only there because she's female, or she speaks funny, or I don't know, whatever else has come up. Who cares? I don't know. I'm past that point. Like, I'm beyond that, but it takes a while to get a thick enough skin to deal with that sort of criticism. So it's a bit of a struggle, but you get there.
Yeah, I also think that they chose you because, you have an amazing personality, great energy. You like to make, funny jokes and stuff like that. And I think those are the most important criteria when choosing you. Plus, you play the game so much. At one time, I remember when you were transitioning from Gwent to MTG, that you were so knowledgeable of everything that was going on. You were actually playing nonstop and streaming it. So I think they just recognize it. But like you say, I think once you get on the team, you are under a magnifying glass, and it's by everybody, and especially the community, especially the people watching. They are the first one to jump gun and actually judge what you're actually doing, which is the worst. And I think that also looking at what is happening, thankfully this is shifting, and I think companies are not doing this because we should be having a female caster, because that's kind of we should be doing, because they feel pressure from outside coming in. I think they're trying to understand that that we need this representation so others can feel like they can be also part of this community, or can be part of esports, and make a living out of this. So it opens the gate here in this sense. And also something similar that also happened in Magic was I think in 2019 the Mythic Championship was won by Autumn Burchett, and this is the first trans non-binary winner of MTG. And I remember I read the comments after that, and people were so mean and so not understanding. But this is some people are just trailblazers that need to go and make a path so others can follow and they can feel included in that community. And it's super difficult because some people have, a strong personality, and, they will go and, go on and continue. But sometimes you get so much negativity hitting you that you just feel okay, this is not for me, and they give up. And that's kind of the worst thing that you can do. So yeah, never give up. Just keep on going.
I have such a specific example here that I just thought of. But the quota thing that you mentioned, Flake, it's also in Gwent, I've noticed. I don't know if you have, Sealy. It's the weirdest thing, but sometimes I notice that, because, Elias, there are 2 female casters currently in Gwent, which is Sealy and I, and then there's a few males. But then you have these Reddit threads, or you have people coming into chat, and they will always directly compare us two, as if it's either one or the other, because there's only space for one female.
Exactly.
And I'm always wait, why? We're not against each other here. Why are you comparing the two of us? We can both cast. It just happens to be the way the pairs are set up that it's normally only one at a time. But it's then they have this whole Reddit thread about, Tia's voice is this way, but Sealy's this way. It's stop this.
Why I don't go on Reddit.
I stay away.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the weirdest thing. But I just keep telling them, this is not the case. It's you shouldn't be doing this, pairing females against each other. It's I don't see that with Lionheart and Spacey or Flake and Shin. It's
the guys will never get that.
Females.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's horrible.
And they're just comparing me and Shin, be those are the 2 guys with glasses. We could only have one. What is this? Plus, myself and Lionheart are both named Matt, so it's how many Matts are there going to be? Our Matt quota has been exceeded by 200% of our Matt quota has been achieved. So I find that's really unfair as well. And to speak to what Elias is saying, if you don't go to Reddit, how else are you going to know you suck? There's no other way. So, but it's true, and I think that this is some kind to a degree as well. It's an unfair assumption, and where you're thinking it's well, she's on there because she's a woman. Well, is she, or is she just a really fucking good Gwent player who also presents the game in a very gripping way, creates great narratives for what's going on as well? I like to think that I was hired because of my talent. And I think that when it comes down to the entire industry, that's how I believe everybody should be basically measured and weighed, is on their talent and merit and such. I mean, experience obviously plays into it as well, but that can be developed. And like you said, Alias, where, you know, they rolled the dice on you, but it's not like you didn't have any practice. Let's be real. You and I cast together. You have experience of presenting particular games because you stream them, and that in itself plays into it. And I see it all the time on Reddit, and that's part of it that's really disappointing, is that why are you not talking about the fact that, let's say, Tia saw this play 3 turns in advance and called it exactly? Because in all honesty, I feel sometimes it's unfair when I make a prediction. I say, like, he's going to do X, Y, Z because yada, yada, yada. It seems unorthodox, but this is really the best line of play. And then it happens, and somebody might say, like, wow, that's a really great read by Flake. But when someone else does it, when, you know, why are you not getting the credit for that exact same thing? Because I've seen it. I've seen Sealy call those plays. I've casted Sealy's matches in some of, like, the Gwentfinity tournaments, and I see some, I'm like, holy Moses, how do you do that? Like, how did you play? Like, Sealy kicked ass and took names, and like it was like another Tuesday. It was like nothing happened. And I witnessed this, and it really kind of bothers me that the same kind of appreciation and respect that I might get for my talent is not necessarily reflected the same way as everyone else. And that kind of, it bothers me to a degree, because I mean, everybody, like, I'm in the same regard that I'm in awe of how Shinmiri can see the game, I'm in awe of how other people can see it. And Shinmiri is revered, rightfully so, as like this Gwent deity because he's so great at it. But there, you know, his level of analysis of the game, it's not unique to him. Other people have it, and I've seen, you know, degrees of that kind of understanding of the game in all of you, and like, but you don't get the same respect, and it can kind of like, I would imagine that for you guys, like, how do you cope with that? How do you deal with the fact that you are getting, you know, you're not getting the respect you deserve for the reasons you deserve them?
It can be definitely frustrating. I was gonna go for another pretty specific example that can happen when I'm streaming sometimes, and you feel like you're under that kind of a magnifying glass or whatever, is that sometimes when I build decks, I run them by pro players in my teams that potentially are also streamers. So then I ask, okay, is there anything I can change? Do you like this? Would you recommend something else? And we go through it together and come up with a deck that I'm like, yay, I want to take this for a spin. I'm going to play it on stream. And when I play it, there's always someone wanting to like pick it apart and be like, oh, is this really what you should be doing? You should do this and you should do that and you should add in this card. So many times, and I guarantee you that if the person that was with me and built the deck and helped me would be streaming that deck, that exact same deck, they would not be getting any of those do this, do that, do this kind of like backseating vibe that is like really common. And that's sometimes when I get a little bit frustrated on stream. And I'm like, what do I have to do for people to take me serious? And what do I have to do for people to also respect some of my views as like a deck builder and a player and all of that? Like, yeah, it's just kind of frustrating. I don't know what else to say.
I don't know if you guys saw on Twitter recently, there's a G4 TV host. Her name's Froskurin. I'm not entirely sure how to say it, but she had an excellent rant on the show recently, speaking about exactly what you're talking about, where the same script writers, you know, a lot of which are female, some males in there too, give each host the same script to read from. So there's nothing separate or special or anything unique about what they're given. They're just given the same script. They're given their lines to say, yet people will always go after her because of how she's delivering and how she's saying it. I'm going to send the link to Flake, and he can maybe stick it in the description if you guys want to go see it. But it's just such a good, you know, middle finger to everyone who does that sort of thing. You know, it's these naive, uneducated individuals who think, oh, because it's not a white male doing it, it's not right. You know, and those kinds of people, I don't have time for them. And, you know, you're talking about getting respect and the kudos you deserve. You know, I've gotten to the point where I understand that the only respect or admiration or whatever, or, you know, good job, Ailey, that I need is from the people that are hiring me and the people that I'm working with. those are the two most important things. Sure, it's nice to have the fans going like, yeah, you did a great job, whatever. I love that. I really do enjoy that. But it's not the be-all and end-all if someone comes after me for something else. So, yeah. I care about who I'm working for and who I'm working with.
I mean,
you guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, like that I wrestle with that myself as well sometimes, you know, and that's ultimately that's what it is. It's like, you know what, and like you said, like just don't go on Reddit and don't read that stuff, because ultimately a lot of it is garbage, and I don't want to keep sort of circling back and you know picking apart Reddit, because there's a lot of positivity that gets thrown our way from there as well. So it's unfair to not recognize that there's a lot of pumping of tires that occurs there, and a lot of people that sort of lift you up, but
it's hard to find it. Like, it's also hard to get, like, we're all content creators. We want criticism, but constructive. Like, we want to learn, we want to get better, we want to be better at whatever we're doing. And it's hard to find this, and like, you need to go through the weeds in order to pull out something like that is good, right? That you can actually learn from. But I think like what Alia said, like validation for yourself, like I know that I'm doing a good job, or I know I made a mistake, I should correct that in the future, or you know, I know that maybe I missed some plays, but I'm going to get better. And, you know, having that for yourself, I think is the most important thing, because if you're okay with yourself, then you're pretty much, you know, and then, you know, the higher ups, or the people who hire you for the job, or who maybe are casting with you, who you can learn from, are kind of the people, you know, that you can get some, you know, good pointers and also, you know, learn from. And if they're happy, then you should be happy. But going to like the whole community part of it, like you will have people who will, you know, give you the thumbs up, but there's a lot of people who are just going to give you shit for no apparent reason, just because they feel like they can and it's like they should.
Well, it has been quite the discussion so far. I think that we have really, honestly, a panel here of professionals, frankly. I mean, and, you know, just we'll sort of wrap this up with a little bow to say that, you know what, you might not necessarily see as much female representation as you might want from the competitive aspect of the scene. It's not that they're not out there, but let's just take a look at where there is wonderful female representation who are doing amazing things. And like one of them is just, there's three right here. And this is something that you need to understand, is a lot of the times, like Pavel mentioned about me, if I wanted to, I could probably qualify for one of these if I put the work in, but I don't want to. This is what I want to do. And oftentimes that this is what is the best way to sort of translate our passion and our talent into something that we can really enjoy and love. And to me, grinding a ladder is not something I enjoy. And this is something I enjoy. So I think we'll wrap up this discussion and maybe do some parting shots here and go around the horn here one more time and just, you know, just wrap up with a final thought here and just, I guess, say a little good. I don't say goodbyes because that seems so like finality, because I know that probably next week I'm swinging by your house, Alias, and picking up a barbecue. Better. Yeah. So, you know, little side note here. We're talking about friends and appreciation or whatever. Ever since I met Alias, every year or two, she moves further and further away from me, which is hilarious. We used to be like practically neighbors, and then every year it's like she adds an extra 50 kilometers away from like where she was, and yeah. So that will forever.
You can be a bit much, you know.
Oh, I get it. I absolutely get it. I totally get it. That's why people like Tia. Yes.
To be fair, I've offered to fly him to come and visit us and stay in our spare room, so it's fine.
What's funny is
we're still gonna see you.
That spare room used to actually just be the Flake spare room, where if ever I wanted to just sort of live there, and now it's like, well, if you want to come, you got to give us a little bit of advance notice. But this is why people like Celia and Tia can tolerate me and are nice to me, is because there's a literal ocean between us, and yeah, they don't have to worry about possibly randomly bumping into me somewhere at like the grocery store or something, where I'll be like, hey, and they're like, oh crap, Jesus. All right, around the horn one more time, Alias, parting shots and where people can follow you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Ailey. I commentate Magic the Gathering, and I stream it pretty darn regularly, and I'm playing Elden Ring at the moment, which is crushing me, but it's fun. If you like Cards, Cats, Commentary, and Commander, which is a Magic format, and it's the best one there is, come hang out. You can just Google me, Alias V, you'll find me.
Nicely done. Pavel, we don't need to talk about you. We know you.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about me. I just want to say that whoever's watching and whoever asked this like question, like pretty much, I just want to know that just do what you love. And if you're having fun, if you're enjoying it, and if you want to be a caster, if you want to be a pro player, if you want to be a streamer, just go for it. Do it. Don't listen to like people telling you no. Don't listen to dudes telling you shouldn't be here. You should be here if it's what you love and what you enjoy, and just like, yeah, don't care about the noise. Be above the noise. That's it for me.
Beautiful. That's I mean, wise words. People always say like anybody can do that, so do it. Go do it, because we're doing it and we're having a great time. Sealy, I've said this before. I've said this publicly. You are an absolute assassin when it comes to Gwent, and it's scary how good you are. And you have translated that into a successful casting career. So I'm always a big fan. And I hope that we could put our ugly first encounter behind us, where I went to go sit at your table and you said, "Get lost, you scrub." I'm paraphrasing.
He did not. I listened to this conversation. You be nice.
I will be nice.
So something like that happened. Definitely, I was terrified when I saw Flake and his Arcus or Larry hats. It was just so terrifying that I couldn't do anything else. But tell him to.
Oh, high school memories flashing back. No. All right, parting shot, Sealy.
All right, I want to do I want to say thank you to all of the new streamers that we have in the Gwent community. We have a lot of awesome new, especially female representation that has kind of popped up really frequently in that, like Taya said, also, in the future, I think we'll see a lot more of those, maybe more esports players even for Gwent, which is really fun. So I want to appreciate all of those new streamers, and it's so fun seeing that the community is getting bigger and better. Yeah, the more the merrier.
I love it. You're not wrong. And finally, Tia, who's also lots to celebrate for you, Tia, because I believe that you've also not only kick-assed Gwent in commentary, but academically as well. You've really, put yourself on the map there. So tell us a little bit about that, as well as with your parting shot, because I think people want to just celebrate the fact that you're not just a big brain in Gwent. You're also a big brain in a lot of other things.
I want to study the brain, to be specific. September I'm going off to Scotland to do neuropsychology and dissect a few brains. I find it interesting. I'll see if it's for me. But and I wanted to say the exact same thing as you, Siri. Like I thought I was imagining it, but there are literally more female streamers popping out everywhere in Gwent, and it's so cool to see. And I think one of these days we'll see like almost just as many females potentially, and some of them in the esports scene. So yeah, that makes me super happy. And if female representation higher up makes a difference at all, that makes me happy as well. I know it did for me. I know it did for Celia as well, as she said. So yeah, and I'm personally very happy in Gwent. Just if anybody watches this, like CDPR is working very hard to actually include a lot of people in Gwent and make sure there's space for all of us. So I'm very grateful to be a part of it as well. It's good on the inside, at least.
Beautiful. Well, ladies, thank you so much for being on the show and for contributing to this conversation, which I felt was best done and most responsibly done with a very inclusive and broader outlook here. So cheers to everybody else. I'm going to end the show as I do every single week by saying, actually, this is usually it's just that I love you to Pavel, but I love all of you. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for coming on.
We love you too, man.
Yeah, we love you.
All right.
You're pretty cool too, Burza.
Oh, thank you. Toss it in there. That's not in the script at all. Friends, don't forget you're not losing if you're learning. Submit all your questions to the Flurza podcast. We'll go back to the standard rotation of, I said that word. Oh my God, I'm going to get crucified.
Of rotation and Gwent.
of Q&A next week, friends, on the Flurza experience. We'll see you next time, friends. Bye.
Bye.